This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, good morning, good evening, whatever uh, timing is in your country. So today I'm taking MySQL 8 Day 3 session, and today I will discuss about MySQL architecture, and this is based on MySQL 8. So this is the first architecture of MySQL, in that we have MySQL server host, which contains MySQL non-client programs and client application, then connection layer, where MySQL server process, and we have client applications too, which connect remote connection. And if we are connecting on same host, that is local connection. So basically, this is the component or architecture of MySQL. And if you go in detail, this is basically um, MySQL server process, client programs which can connect locally or remote, and other MySQL program that installed locally, basically that are not client, and client programs connected to the MySQL server process to make data request. Okay. So here, MySQL client server connectivity. So MySQL client server communication is not limited to the environment where all components, computers run on the same operating system. So client program can connect, as I said, to the server running on the same host or on a different host, and client server communication can occur in environment where computer runs different server operating system, like MySQL server process running on Linux, and client program running on Windows and connecting via TCP/IP. So this configuration can happen in that this MySQL server client connectivity. Now MySQL server process. So MySQL server process has which is called, if suppose we are installing MySQL server, so it is called as MySQL D, which contains connection layer, SQL layer, and storage layer. In storage layer, we have disk, memory, network, and all MySQL server connect to applications. So this is the diagram. So MySQL D basically server program which consists of 3 layers. So the connection layer handles connection, and this layer is not unique to MySQL, and all server software has such a layer. For example, web, mail, LDAP server, and SQL layer process SQL queries that are sent by connection applications, and the storage layer handles data storage in various format and structure on various types of physical media. So this is diagram about internal. And if we go about MySQL server process, so as I said, it is a program called MySQL D, run as a single process that is multi-threaded and manage access to databases on disk and in memory, and supports simultaneous client connection, and supports multiple storage engine, and support both transactional and non-transactional tables, and optimizes memory usage by using caches and buffers, just like as Oracle. Okay. Now my SQL terminology. So in that we have host, we have MySQL server process, server software, and third one is MySQL server interface instance. So host basically the physical machine or virtual machine on which the server program runs. So that will include its hardware configuration, operating system running on the machine, and its network addresses. And MySQL server process basically a server software program which is MySQL D with a version number and a list of features. And MySQL server instance basically MySQL D server process that manage a data directory containing one or more schema. So multiple instances can run on a single host. So this terminology will be used in MySQL if you are installing or configuring MySQL server software in your virtual machine or physical machine. Now, how MySQL transmit the data? So in that, the connection layer component is very important, where we have first stage connection layer, and it contains connection protocols, threads, authentication, and protocols like classic protocol, X protocol. So the connection layer maintain one thread per connection, and this thread handles query execution. Before a connection begin sending SQL queries, the connection is authenticated by the verification of username and password and client host, just like as in Oracle database connection. And the connection layer accept connections from applications over several connection protocols like TCP/IP, unique socket, shared memory, and named pipes. And MySQL 8 supports two types of connection. One is classic protocol and another one is X protocol. Okay. So MySQL connection protocols are implemented in the client libraries and drivers, and the speed of the connection protocol varies with local setting. And in addition to legacy MySQL Classic protocol, the MySQL X protocol is introduced in MySQL 5.7.1.2 and enabled by default in MySQL 8. So if you can see that we have TCP/IP, socket file, shared memory, named pipe. So TCP/IP can connect local and remote, but other protocol can connection only be local, and supports classic protocols for shared and named, and socket can classic and X protocol, same way TCP/IP. And for TCP/IP, operating systems can be all, but socket it should be Linux and Mac OS. And for shared memory and named pipes, it will be Windows for both the shared memory and named pipes. Okay, so MySQL uses TCP to transmit messages from client to the server over the network, and the other protocol which are listed in the slide basically supported only local connections where the client and server are running on the same machine. Okay, so the MySQL X protocol can be configured by using variables and option prefixed with MySQL X, and some example of MySQL X variable is like MySQL X underscore bind underscore address, and MySQL X underscore max underscore connections, MySQL X underscore port, MySQL X underscore socket. So like that, we can use these variables to configure MySQL X protocol. And now MySQL local and remote connection protocol, that is, as I said, TCP/IP. So by default, MySQL classic protocol server port is 3306. For MySQL X 33060. For administrative connection for MySQL classic protocol, that is 33062. So as of MySQL 8.0.14, MySQL permits a TCP/IP port to be configured especially for administrative connection. So this provides an alternative to the single administrative connection that is permitted on the network interfaces used for ordinary connection. Even maximum max underscore connections are already established. So this interface basically available only if we use admin underscore address system variable is set at startup to indicate the IP address of the administrative interface. Okay, so if no admin underscore address value is specified, the server maintains no administrative interface and connection are permitted only by user who have the service underscore connection underscore admin privileges. Okay, so there is no limit on the number of administrative connection. And MySQL server uses DNS to resolve the name of the client host that connect using the TCP/IP protocol, storing them in a host cache. And for large network that exhibit performance problem during name resolution, so we can disable DNS with the skip name resolution option or increase the value of the host cache size option. So if you can see the command MySQL dash dash host equals to MySQL host one dash dash user equals to root dash dash password. So this is using a host name and the default port, no option is specified. And second, if I'm saying MySQL -h 192.168.1.8 -p 330. So here I'm using port option, so that's why I am assigning p and -u root -p. So like that we can do the connection. Now local connection protocol in Linux socket. So like a form of inter-process communication requires that the server creates a socket file on the local system with the socket and MySQL X underscore socket option for MySQL Classic and X protocol. And if suppose I'm using the location where my socket file is there, so where lib MySQL, in that we have mysql.sock file. So we can give the full path with the -s variable or a -s option. And if I'm using the default socket file that located in the temp location, that is mysql.sock, and by that we will give only mysql -u root -p. If no host is specified, so MySQL assume -h local host. So that DBA should remember. And also in inter-process communication, it will form one end of a bidirectional communication link between two processes on the same machine. And client specify the socket file with the option -s, capital S, or you can type the socket. So this is the best connection type for Linux. Now localhost. My SQL assumed the TCP protocol when you specify dash dash host equals to host name, and when the host name is localhost. If the host name is localhost, MySQL assume you are connecting using a Unix socket. So to connect to the localhost, we know that 127.0001 or dot dot one, sorry, colon this one. And if you specify TCP explicitly, you can specify MySQL -h localhost -protocol TCP uroot -p. And if you specify the localhost IP address explicitly, you can give by these two ways, which I have mentioned here. And MySQL local connection protocol in Windows, and shared memory and named pipes. So shared memory, so basically the server creates a named shared memory block, and client process connecting running on the same host use the shared memory to communicate with the server, and shared memory is disabled by default. So if you want to use a shared memory, so you can specify hyphen dash dash protocol equals to memory. And if you are using named pipe, so in Windows, named pipe work much like Unix socket. So the server creates the named pipe, and clients writes to it and reads from it. And a named pipe support read write operation, and along with an explicit passive mode for server application. So how you can do that? You can type dash dash protocol equals to pipe. So when you create a user on the server, you can configure the user to use SSL connection mandatory, and the server disallow connection from such a user if the connection is not encrypted. Okay. So both shared memory and named pipe connection protocol are disabled by default in MySQL server. So to enable shared memory connection, start the server with the dash dash shared dash memory option. And to enable named pipe connection, you must use high dash dash enable dash named dash pipe. Okay. And for X protocol support, both the shared memory and named pipe in Windows do not support the MySQL X protocol. So this work will be with the MySQL Classic protocol only. So remember this point. So MySQL SSL by default. So for TCP/IP connection, the connection layer uses secure encrypted connection when they are available. So in that, MySQL package installer creates SSL keys, and if OpenSSL is installed on the server host, so the installer calls the MySQL SSL RSA setup utility to create the keys. If you install from a binary archive, call this utility manually. And second point, MySQL client use SSL if keys are available, and keys are in the data dictionary. So remember this. And copy client keys to remote clients to enable encrypted remote connection. And third point, if SSL is not available, connection are unencrypted. So you can configure the server and client to use SSL mandatorily. And SSL is not supported on socket, named pipe, and shared memory connection. So it will support only for TCP/IP connection. Now connection threads. So the server creates a connection thread for each active client connection. So when the server creates and destroy connection threads, it must allocate and deallocate memory structure used by those client connection. So there is a performance overhead associated with this activity when clients connect and disconnect frequently. So all statements executed by that client are executed by a single server thread, and the server destroy the thread when the client disconnect. And the thread pool plugin manage connection and server threads separately. So what does this mean? The thread pool plugin is available in commercial edition of MySQL, and it is designed to reduce the performance overhead of creating and destroying connection thread by separating the client connection from the connection thread, and limiting the number of statements that execute concurrently, especially short running statement. So uh, there is a XDAV API support connection pooling where the client can maintain a pool of connection for reuse. So what is the mean? Connection pooling can reduce the overhead for applications that open many connections to a MySQL server. Okay, so this is connection pooling. Okay, so that's it for this today's session. Actually, it has many parts, so I will cover slowly this architecture so that you can understand better. And you can register for free webinar of next session by these links. And if you have any questions, you can write to me. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can ask.